So we just got done doing Break the Ice's story in Arknights, and I gotta say the twists and turns in this one had my attention the entire time. It was a lot of fun, and I'm so happy that we got to experience that live on stream. But let's go ahead and talk about the reasons that I thought it was so good. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is just kind of the build up. I think they did very, very good at introducing the different clans, the different characters, and kind of having this overarching story. It really seemed that everybody had the right mindset for what they wanted Chirag to go into, but they had different ways of attaining that goal. Now, we did kind of get introduced to Gnosis, which seemingly was a very good character for Silverash, and it seemed like they had a lot of bond, especially when they grew up together, and then moving into Victoria and then moving back to Chirag with their ultimate goal to make Chirag a little bit more efficient, a little bit more outreached, as it is a closed off place, and to kind of just modernize a lot of the ways of thinking of the clans people and the people in general. And I felt that they did a very good job of kind of like framing Gnosis as like the bad guy. Spoiler territory right here, so if you haven't read anything about it, do kind of take note. But Gnosis ends up being kind of like the fall guy basically for Silverash. They had the same ideals in the same way that they wanted to achieve things, but they had like different ways that they wanted to kind of do it. So Gnosis went a kind of more of a dramatic, more like tactical, more aggressive approach is what I would kind of say, whereas Silverash kind of wanted to play the pawns and play everybody in the way that he wanted to, a little bit more manipulative, as a lot of people have been saying. So Stream and I had a lot of different conversations about who was right or wrong, who did what and when, and who was ultimately the bad guy. And ultimately, I think that there wasn't necessarily a real person that was like the bad person. And it seems like this is a really cool theme that Arknights tends to do, where it's like it kind of gives you an idea of why people are doing things at the way that they're doing it, and it's up to the viewer and the player to kind of decide whether they agree with that or not. In some vein, you know, Silverash was manipulative. He did a lot of different things, and some people even said that he was super aggressive and didn't care what needed to be done in order to achieve his goals. I personally think that Silverash had a arcing idea of how he wanted the overall Chirag to go, and he was willing to manipulate some different things to have that happen. But I don't think he was actually trying to harm anybody. I don't think he was trying to like kill off, you know, people who are disagreeing with him, or even kill off clans members. I think what he was just kind of doing is trying to manipulate them, so then he had most of the power, and then that Saintess was kind of like, you know, the reign of supreme on the religion and the people, and then Silverash can kind of go behind scenes and do whatever he needed to do with resources and kind of modernizing Chirag. With that being said, I do think Silverash was trying to play everything behind the scenes. I really think that he was going to manipulate Saintess into a position where she was just kind of in charge of religion and kind of just like the face of the people. And while that did end up happening, I do think it happened a lot better with the story arc with Saintess actually be like, you know what, I'm going to take this power and I'm going to give Silverash the ability to do his resources and, you know, mess with the foreigners and kind of modernize Chirag that way. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this power and I'm going to be in charge, because Silverash was probably wanting to manipulate Saintess in a way where he was kind of doing everything behind the scenes, and she was just kind of the face, the preacher of it all, and he was in charge. But Saintess was like, you know what, you can have this little cutout of the area that you're already doing, but I'm going to be in charge here. I'm going to be the person that they look up to and the person that they ultimately kind of understand and go with when I have the final say, which I think was a huge step up for the Saintess. I think it was really cool that even though they had similar ideas with Silverash and the Saintess, I do think that she had her own version of it in the way that she's like, yes, we do need to modernize. Yes, we need to reach out to other countries. And we got to make sure that we're not as isolated as we've been, because those are very traditional, very old, stuck in ways. Well, let's go ahead and move on. That's what the goddess would like us to do. And I think the goddess is strong enough to deal with kind of the criticisms of the foreigners. And so she was able to persuade people. And I really think that was a fitting ending for the story, because it kind of gave Silverash what he wanted. And it gave the you know, the whole city of Chirag kind of the direction that they needed to go in order to be a little bit more modern and be able to thrive in this kind of area that they're in. So overall, I think that the way that they did the story was fantastic, and the pacing was really well done, introducing all the different clans, the Browntails, the Pelrocks, and the Silverashes, and also introducing like kind of their agendas and why they thought the way that they did and what they thought ultimately was the best way for Chirag to go. And while they did have kind of like crossing paths with the Silverashes at the very beginning, you kind of feel like, okay, Silverash seems like they're kind of the bad guys, but then you start to dig into some of the different like clans, like the Browntails, the Pelrocks, and you start to understand that it's not just black and white, like justice versus injustice. And it starts to get like a little bit more into like the dark history of each of the clan and kind of why they've come to the conclusion that they have, and ultimately why they've decided that the Saintess is probably the best route for them. And honestly, I gotta say the Saintess is probably a better leader than the Elder, because the Elder was very, very stuck in his ways. And honestly, seemingly was like the worst person out of the whole entire thing. He didn't want anybody to do anything. He wanted everybody to be stagnant, and he was literally like, hey, they just need to blindly follow the religion, and we just need to stay isolated forever, never to change. So it was really cool to see like kind of how that transition happened to the Saintess being in power, and I really think that Chirag is going to be way better than it was previously. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.